Hey, morning everyone. Look, Pete Follett's my name, and I'm happily calling you today from Delft with our wonderful co-host Deltatus. They've been friends of Australian-Dutch collaboration since I first got involved back in 2011, 13, 14. But we're in one of their beautiful facilities here in Delft. I literally look out the window and I've got a waterbed, I've got just beautiful water features. It's an amazing place, and we're really lucky to be there. So thanks very much to my Deltaris colleagues. And look, to our Australian colleagues as well, let's acknowledge the traditional owners that who have been looking after our waterways and our landscape for many years, and who are also part of the water modelling network. And they're certainly showing us ways to engage and share stories around water management. So today is just another part of that storytelling journey that we're on. So I happily pay my respect to those colleagues and to the country wherever you are from today. But look, folks, just quickly, today we're coming together essentially to tell some stories about the challenge that many of us have on how do we engage with our different audiences in our various workplaces to sort of navigate some of the big challenges we have, not only associated with water management, but with land management, with climate change, with planning, but how do we engage with them in such a way that they have a deeper understanding of the challenge, but more importantly, maybe an understanding of what they could do themselves in their role. And I suppose in many years, different ways have happened in terms of whether you literally spend time face to face, exploring things, you go in the field, you have a look at things. But in recent times, what we've discovered is that through a lot of analytical tools, we've actually got these engagement sort of techniques and methodology that are based on sort of modeling tools that now represent themselves in visualization tools, or the use of serious games, and who knows what else is out there, because I think that's what today's about. So we're going to explore what that looks like from a Dutch perspective, from an Australian perspective, and hopefully see what we can learn from each other. More importantly, you're going to have time to meet some of the speakers to give us some deeper questioning, because the speakers, it's like a really small marketplace. We're going to hear some very sort of quick vignettes of what their work has been, but then you're going to get a chance to break out and you get to visit each of the speakers. We're going to come back, and then we're going to give you a question that we'd like you to go away to talk about based on the experience and what we've heard today. So for those listening, this is very much an opportunity for you to be involved, as it is to hear from the speakers. And so the other thing I'd like to say is that if you do have a question, please use the chat. If you've got anything you'd like to share, please use the chat, and we'll try and pull this all together. We're recording today, so... But look, just also before I go too much further, a shout out to my other colleague, Kirsten DeVet, who's in the room here with me. Kirsten's been great in helping out on things. And then back in the Australian end, my dear colleagues, Sarah Cochran and Brian McIntosh have been putting things together. And you'll meet our 6 speakers in a moment. And Sarah's she's so multitask, she's actually going to be a speaker today as well. So this will keep her on her toes. So this is good. And I've also got a special guest here in the room with me. It's Melanie Astik from the Australian Embassy here in the Netherlands. She's interested to observe. And then back in Sydney, we have Nathan de Bruin from the Dutch Embassy. So this whole issue of collaboration, which is a deeper story, is part of the reason we're here. And we're really seeing how, as professionals in different countries, we can also share each other, share experience with each other. So very different, but let's see how it goes. Look, just conscious of time, I'm going to try and keep to my schedule. Let's get on to our, I think our first thing, yes, up on the screen here, just to give you a feel of who we have with us here today. We literally have about 2/3 of the people from Australia, 1/3 from the Netherlands, and then a few other people from Finland, a few places in Pakistan and other parts of Africa. But we've got quite a few consultants joining us, which is sort of interesting because it is a bit of a specialized area, both in terms of the software and the engagement. But within the research sector, there's definitely a bit of a ongoing sort of interest to see the role of engagement. Great to see a nice wad of colleagues from the state government in Queensland and a few local government colleagues. Like, when I think about local government as a place where this engagement is really high, and we'll hear from Alan Hoban later on how it helped him in some of his work. We've got some national government colleagues and also our water utility colleagues, both Australia and the Netherlands. They also have a huge sort of role, and a few other people from regional NRM bodies and some industry representatives. So a nice diverse mix, which I think is great to give us a sense of the different roles that engagement does and how the different tools are working. And let's be honest, sometimes they don't always work as well as we'd like. And maybe today's an opportunity to find out what might be possible to overcome that. So let's get into it, I think, because that's the best thing I wanted to do. And to get the ball rolling, I'd love to invite my colleague Gregor van Essen to start. Gregor works for a group called the Water Agency. He's been a good friend, colleague of mine for many years, does a lot of work through Asia, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Indonesia. And he has a passion around engagement, has done it for many years with young water professionals, but recently his team are doing work in a whole range of things. And the tool Watercraft or Raincraft has been one thing that he loves to promote. So Gregor, over to you, my friend, and the minutes are ticking.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Pete. Hi, everyone. Really excited to share with you about our Asia Raincraft program. So Asia Raincraft is a serious game that we developed to engage local communities in Asia with water and climate challenges that they face in their own living environments. So this is really looking at water issues at a household, street, and neighborhood level. And at the Water Agency, we use this program as one of our tools to promote better, more inclusive stakeholder community and youth engagement in the projects that we do. I'd like to ask Kirsten to run the video, and then I'll try to provide some a bit of voiceover explaining what you are looking at. So in 2020, we first tested Asia Raincraft as part of a climate adaptation project that we were doing with a community in Yangon, Myanmar. Due to COVID and the military coup, we couldn't continue doing the work on the ground, and that is how the idea was born to create a digital model replica of the neighborhood. So we could continue engaging the community online, virtually walking around the neighborhood together with people, hear about the problems they have and discuss solutions. As we got quite excited about the potential of this approach, we also realized that we could make it stronger if the participants would be better educated on the foundational water climate subjects at the start of the program. So we developed a series of interactive learning education modules, and you see some examples here through which people can be taught on various topics such as the urban water cycle, working of drains in cities, causes of flooding, principles of greening, household water, and other things. So yeah, really taking people along with us in learning about water, and then applying it in Minecraft, designing solutions. So bringing this together, we ran another pilot project over the past 6-9 months in the city of Con Tum in the Mekong Delta, Vietnam. Also a city that has a lot of different water climate related challenges. And in partnership with Con Tum University, we used Asia Raincraft to give residents on the campus. Is it stalling? Oh, yeah, very good. Thanks. So giving residents of the campus, student teachers, a voice in the development of a new blue-green master plan for the campus, addressing issues they were facing with flooding, heat stress, water pollution, and water scarcity. And I think you can see from the video that is that the little guy in the video? Maybe not. And look, I think you can see from the work they did here is that designing in Minecraft is functional, but it can be really inspiring as well. It's really beautiful how you can create these real life designs, which has indeed been very inspirational for the people in Canton and the participants of the program. Not yet included in this video are some of our new programs still in progress, which includes a program on the island of Bali, just around the corner from every one of you down under. That program just started. We're starting the first non-urban, like a rural edition with farming communities in Tra Vinh province in Vietnam. And last but not least, we just started an assignment together with the Taras and Wageningen University to develop a serious game addressing the issue of groundwater extraction in Vietnam. And I'm expecting that to have elements of Raincraft included as well. Look, I think it's really encouraging to see that institutions are starting to open up to the notion of involving people and giving them a voice and having them have an active role in contributing to climate adaptation, and also see the potential value of serious gaming as a way to engage with people. So yeah, we're very enthusiastic about this as an approach. That's all, Pete. Back to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Gregor. Appreciate that. Was a great sort of overview, and just I think the dynamics are moving through the game, and that's what it does. That was fantastic. Thanks for keeping the time, Gregor. Much appreciated. So now we're going to flick to an Australian perspective. So my dear colleague Sarah, who also works with the Australian Rivers Institute, and this has been a program of research that has this project has a strong track record on research into landscape rehabilitation that's been going for many, many years. But now it's at a point of going, how do we tell the story to the various investors and people who are trying to enact the change on the ground? And so Sarah's going to walk us through this visualization tool that has sort of been built off some very rich data and modeling. And over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much for that, Pete. Thanks, Kirsten. If you just go to the next slide. Great. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, the building catchment resilience tools have been in development for many years. About 20 years of research and development has gone into these tools, but the package of the project has happened only in the last few years. These tools are designed as a framework for engaging with the diverse audience, but also house a really complex model that optimizes for investments in catchment restoration activities. So housed within this whole cycle, you can see here in front of us, there's a process of engaging with stakeholders interested in investing and landholders that might need to help with the decision-making process there. So this circle in the middle helps sort of identify that as this iterative, deliberative process. And the visualization tools are something that sort of sits out as an end result for that. So the next slide goes on to explain a little bit about how what information is actually in these visualization tools. It's been developed by our partners. It's a big partnership, this project, with about 10 partners. The advisor team at the Queensland University of Technology have actually developed this element of the project and have been included all of this information in there. So then we'll just go on to the next slide, which if you press play, this is the virtual reality aspect of the catchment management tools. And we're looking at multiple scenarios where we can see, in this instance, we're looking at sediment production from planting units within or sub-catchments within the greater catchment. This is a small catchment in the Upper Brisbane Upper Brisbane River. And so we're able to get right down onto the ground and see the impact of management actions. And it's rendered. This isn't the rendered image, but here we are getting closer to the ground, and you can see there's renders of trees. The idea is to show or demonstrate to our landholders and other stakeholders the impact of these management actions in place. You can see there's a lot of information in these tools, from the sediment, the nitrogen, and cost impact, And there's always been this privacy concern. You can see here in this image, the privacy is about as complex as what we'll see in a Google Earth image. All the information is searchable in these tools, and being an immersive tool, we're really finding, well, I've spent a lot more time in these tools than anybody else, but I'm finding that the process of decision making can actually be really refined by jumping in and having that immersive experience, feeling like you're on ground. So this is the very beginning of the rollout of this project, and we're really just starting the engagement process. If you don't mind, let's skip to the next slide. Okay. There it is. So yeah, the process of engagement has only started since I've been on board. I've only been around for 12 months on this project. So this is what we've been doing, just rolling out through local governments and NRM groups, community groups, and other forum events, whatever event we can get along to, just to start to socialize these tools. There remains some skepticism around virtual reality. Because of, I guess, the immersive experience, people get a little bit skeptical, but it's an interesting process. I come from an embodied experiential kind of space myself, and bringing people into that virtual world has to be done in a safe manner. So having somebody to guide people through that experience is proving to work really well. The audience for these alternate realities, I suppose, is also a question that we're still working with, but expecting that it's going to be the people who've been raised with computers that are going to more likely interact with this. My personal experience in the interaction or demonstrations of these tools, when people are actually putting them on, I've had more interest from young women than I have from anybody else. And I don't know if that's accessibility, because I'm maybe look a little bit like them, but perhaps it's something else there. And yeah, that's it.
Fantastic.
That's a photo of me in front of the local waterfall.
Yeah, water's part of us all. It's great. Hey, look, thanks for that, Sarah. Look, you touched on a few really nice issues. Like, I think for me, yes, it's the beginning of a process. Like, this is one of the big challenges of these tools, and I've actually watched this tool developed over many years, and it's very impressive, but it does take a while to get your head around it. So the fact that I really liked your frank discussion about how this is just at the beginning, because time will tell on this one, because there's a lot at stake here. And I think it's a great case study of how we can do this in Australia. Okay, so we're going to flip back from Australia across to the Netherlands here. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah. No. Sorry. Yep, it's all right. Now we're talking with our colleague Hilda Sandeman from TU Delft. So Delft is the home of water and universities and all things academic. And she's literally in this campus nearby. Like, I think if I go to Shanghai somehow and through the rock, I'd most likely find her building nearby. But Hilda's going to come on, and she's going to talk about the challenge of water values and how that's sort of being shared using serious games. And I think it's to do with water boards. Sorry, I've had to shut my computer, so a few of my little key delicate things are not here. But Hilda, thanks for coming on board. And let's head over to you to tell us the experience of the water values games. Thank you, Hilda.
Thank you, Pete. Thanks for having me. Yes, so the water values serious game started 2 years ago, approximately, as an idea, because we were thinking. I'm based at TU Delft, but we are working together in a interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, inter-university collaboration called Port City Futures. I'm also based in Rotterdam, so you wouldn't hit me personally, but maybe my faculty. I'm a historian. We work together with architects, civil engineers, anthropologists, and economists. And everyone is able to join as long as you have an affinity with kind of the crossover between water and land and all the exciting things that are happening there. So what we noticed was that when it comes to water, of course, we need to increase awareness, we need to increase engagement, but also to increase action, also between stakeholders. And we started out working together with Ecomos with an idea for a game that uses the landscape and the longitudinal approach to the landscape. Pete, as you also mentioned earlier, we are working with what our predecessors made, and we need to protect that or change that. Heritage isn't necessarily a good thing. So that is the how we came up with the idea of the serious board game water values. So maybe the next slide. We started working together with the game maker IJsfontein from Amsterdam, and we the idea, as you might recognize, is very Catan setup, and we literally want to bring people together at the table. And that's why we chose for a board game that you can touch and that you can hold and you can sit together and negotiate. So the main basis is the 3 twos: maintain water levels, too much, too little, and mitigate pollution, so the 2 polluted parts. So with every interaction you do, with every step you take, you need to keep that in mind. And we try to simulate a long-term decision-making process, which lasts over 10 decades. So you have changes of government, you have changes of executive power, but also we try to simulate challenges that are current. So either too little water in the deserts, extraction of water through industry, the sinking of heritage, for example, and all these challenges are based on real life examples. So there are 3 teams that play together, because if you don't reach the common goal, no one will win the game. But of course, because games are also more fun if they are competitive, you can also win the game once you have reached the common goal. So with the water values in the back of our mind, so we are working with a lot of professionals who use value-based negotiations, value-based planning as their core business. We came up with these 3 groups, which are not perfect. And I also need to say that this is still a game that is in process and is still in development. The technological, the economic, and the cultural, who need to cooperate, but also need to protect their own values. And what is nice, I think, about the game as it is now is that it is kind of hackable. You have this modular setup with different kinds of soil, with different kinds of developments that you can use either to make your own scenario, but also, as you see in the next slide, that you can hack to use to. Oh, maybe you can put the sound on. I was thinking that I turned it off. But also, it's kind of to use as a game that you can play with children. For example, we use it to play memories. Like the 2 cards that you have to recognize with the bottom up, but also to kind of build landscapes. So with that in mind, we now have 100 boxes in print. We are using it to play the game with a lot of stakeholders, also to see where it lands best. We played it at the UN Water Conference in New York last March. With some colleagues from Deltares as well, but also with people from all around the world. And we kind of are honing in our target audience to young professionals working in the water sector, who are interested in working with values, but still are thinking of ways of how to do this. So this is something that has come out of several processes, and we now in the process with the game maker also to see how we can scale up, maybe have digitized elements to the game, make it more inclusive, because it's kind of expensive to print a game like this, but also we are looking forward to this process. Please get in touch because
sorry to jump in. But let's just pause there, because I think you've given I'm sorry, I'm being the taskmaster here. But look, I think that's a great insight. And I think it's really interesting. Like, we're talking here we're talking about values. So we're taking, you know, some of the issues that are really nearly sit at a strategic level, and you're making a game out of that. So I'm really impressed by that opportunity that you've been able to do, and the concept of scenarios. And I know in the Netherlands, you know, that's a huge planning issue around climate change and all sorts of issues, even the whole flooding and water storage, you know, like you know, there's a scenario that's not so popular, which is called, you know, maybe relocating west or relocating east. And but sometimes that's on the table, and sometimes it's off the table. But you know, some of these things are really, really fascinating in the sense that they're part of a real process of looking at the future, and your serious game is helping unpack that. Thanks for sharing that, and people have a chance. So don't forget, everyone, after we finish with these couple of speakers, we're going to jump into a small session where you can choose your speaker and go and ask some more detailed questions. So thanks, Hilda. Nice to have you. And Rotterdam, also one of my interested favourite spots down the road. And maybe I'm there in half an hour on my bike, so it's not too far away. So yeah, okay, speedy bike trip. Okay, thanks, Hilda. Let's go to our next presenter, and it's a dear friend of mine, Alan Hoban. Alan is, we've worked in different roles over the years, and Healthy Waterways was a interested collective we worked on many years ago. And as I look at this, Al, I can't help but think in terms of water sensitive design, the work that you're doing there. This project was very much part of the thinking. And Alan's going to talk about a very practical way in which he, as a consulting engineering company, had to help the city talk to their community about what might be a scenario for the future for this waterway restoration in a small place called Small Creek in Ipswich. So thanks, Al, over to you.
Thanks, Pete. So yeah, this was a project. It was called Small Creek, but it used to be a creek. But as you can see in the photo here, it then got turned into a concrete drain, like many waterways around the world. It's part of a big wave just to turn a lot of our creeks into efficient drainage channels. And the local government had a vision to naturalise this waterway and turn it back into a natural creek. And initially they had a fairly typical consultation process where group of experts, which is me and my team, would go off and do a design, then bring it back and then ask the community what they thought and hope that they all said that's great, and then we go to build it. But it's not a great process for involving people in the process. And so what we wanted to do was set up a co-design process, and we called it Design Your Creek Week. So we set up on site for a whole week and worked through a fairly intensive design process with the community. Just jump to the next slide. Often when we're doing creek projects, they involve, especially technical people get involved in the complexities of flood modelling or geomorphology. And it's very difficult then for the community to engage in those conversations. So we did a couple of things to engage the community during this week-long co-design process. One was that we built a couple of little models, just little simple models of waterways. These things only cost $250 to build each, just using basic parts from a local hardware store, a little pump and some sand and gravel. But it allowed kids and people to get in and not just talk about what they wanted, but just to play with water and start to think about how water and sediment and those processes start to work. It was also a really useful tool in keeping kids occupied while we could have more in-depth stories with their parents about what the place used to be like, or some of the more in-depth questions we want to know about how the site would engage with people's property. So it was a good diversion as well as a useful tool to get people engaged in that conversation. The other thing we did on site was actually brought the flood modelling on site. So we set up a caravan on site with computers and flood models so that we could test almost in real time different scenarios. So after we're having conversations with people on site, we'd be able to run flood models and test different scenarios and then show them the results and involve them in that process, including involving them in seeing scenarios that didn't work. You know, we'd come up with some models that would be a little bit, oh, whoops, sorry, that's going to flood your house. Let's just change something else. And by being quite transparent in that process, which is normally a process that's hidden from the community, I think it helped build a lot of trust. The other thing about working on site is it led us to a lot of the design on a one-to-one scale. We could map out with flagging tape and mark out where we thought things should be and look at them in the site they're meant to be, and that helped us and the community understand what was going to happen. So it's a useful way of engaging them in the design. And the next slide here shows the finished product. And as a result, the community feel a real sense of ownership of this, that they help create this space. And one of the reasons that's really important is places like this need ongoing community stewardship in terms of looking after them, managing weeds and litter and other things. So making the community feel like they're part of the design process is critical to the long-term success of these projects as well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Al. That's great. Like this particular little project's sort of been an interesting one to watch. Like it's had time on its side, but I like what you said there, Al. It was a door opener to a whole range of other things. But yeah, I love the concept of the physical model, not only for the little kids, but I'm sure the big kids were in there playing there as well. And then bringing that science. And I know for your own team that you had on site, it was a great challenge for them. I think for the technologists involved in this engagement process, it's a huge learning opportunity for them too. Like until you come face to face with some of our sort of primary stakeholders, you know, do we really understand what they understand or not? I don't know. It's an interesting one. Okay, I rant on. Let me rant on now and introduce our next speaker. And it's Michael, sorry, where's Michael's surname? So there it is, Michael van Leeuwen from Waterproof. Now, we're sort of looking at the big issue now around climate change. And honestly, like, to its credit, the Dutch have been very serious about embracing the need to work with their community. Not to say that we're not doing it in Australia, but I must admit, I look with envy sometime by which the Europeans, the Dutch included, are doing this. So we're definitely keen to learn from Michael, from what you're doing. So let's hear from Michael in terms of your climate workspaces that you've created. Thanks very much, Michael.
Thank you. So first of all, lovely to hear from all the other speakers and all tools that you are developing. And I really agree with Alan. I think that the thing that we are doing, creating climate workspaces, is it's not specifically creating one tool, but creating a space where tools like the ones that have already been introduced can be put to use to create a long-term space of collaboration between public sector, universities, companies, designers, and residents. So this was born from we are a fairly small consultancy in the Dutch water sector. And one of the things that we noticed is that a lot of water authorities and municipalities and the provinces, which are our main clients, they all function in these little islands. Like their knowledge is very contained within their own network. And the same is true for people like designers who really want to help the world improve. They create beautiful products like the tools that you've been making, but they struggle to connect these new tools and these designs to climate action. So we want to create a space where residents and these designers and these policy people can come together, have discussions, feel engagement, help each other improve, and quicken, accelerate the climate action. I think that this is also a big issue because within a Dutch municipality, I think 60 to 80% of the entire area is privately owned, either by companies or by residents. So if a municipality wishes to be climate adaptive, they will need to engage these people at some point. So how do you do this? I think one of the main things that we are looking at, so this is still also very much in a startup phase. We had our first startup meeting in March of this year. We're now building it towards a hackathon, where all these people, the residents, public sector, designers, researchers sort of mix up, and within, well, I would say multidisciplinary, but I think a resident isn't specifically a discipline that you are. So these multi-stakeholder teams will work together to think about a practical issue that one of the municipalities in the Utrecht region of the Netherlands is facing. And the particular challenge that we are having is how to bootstrap a learning community with so many different stakeholders in there. So I think within the breakout room that I'll be hosting in a bit, we'll mainly be discussing how to get these very diverse groups of people together, how to get them to speak the same language, and how to use these opportunities to introduce the tools that you've been sharing previously to accelerate climate action.
Okay, thank you, Michiel. That's a great overview of your work. Look forward and and then the workshop is a good chance. So I'll be curious to know where you're doing it. It sounds like you've got a few specific places, but we can discuss that. Okay, so from the Netherlands, we're just going to flick back to Australia, and it's with great pleasure that we go up to Mackay. So for our Dutch fellows, was it Jeroen? No, not Jeroen. Our friend who's about to visit Australia. When you're driving from Sydney to Cairns, you'll go through Mackay. So if you get a chance to see Emma, you might. It's on the way. But Emma works for Robert. Yeah, you can go via Mackay. Go say hello to Emma. But,
thank you.
Definitely. More than welcome.
Emma works for the Natural Resource Management Group, who have a really interesting role to engage for a whole range of people, not only farmers, but sort of water managers to local sort of urban community and a mix of people, like a lot of mining and sort of based out of this area. So Emma's been working with reef catchments for a few years now. And then in her role, like she's out there on a regular basis, talking to people about a range of issues around water quality outcomes. But Emma, talk us through what is it that helps you do your job when it comes to engagement tools. Over to you, Emma.
Lovely, thanks for that, guys, and thanks for having me along today. And yeah, you're definitely more than welcome to pass on through. The Whitsundays is beautiful, which is actually where I'm based up here in northern Queensland. Yeah, so I guess for us, you've kind of alluded to the fact our job is all about getting out there on ground and seeing landholders and being involved at a practical level out there on the ground. So for me, I guess for my role, it's more of a middleman. I like to think that I'm kind of taking some of these tools that we've heard about today, some really interesting topics here, and sort of, I guess, being that middle person to lead engagement on the ground and get new landholders involved and or aware of the tools that are out there and able to be utilised. So we just head to the next slide there. So for us, so I guess one thing is taking a step back and kind of thinking about why do we need engagement? So for us, so we do a lot of on-ground restoration type projects with reef catchments. So as mentioned, we invest heavily in the water quality space. So we are one of the catchments that feeds into the Great Barrier Reef, if you guys are aware. So one of the key pressures out there at the reef is water quality and how that impacts the resilience of the reef going forward. So the engagement need, I guess, comes from no works on ground or in catchments occur without our landholders. All of our works occur on private property. So it's crucial that we're out there in the community, we're building rapport and trust with our landholders and really engaging in that community space. One thing as well that we sort of focus on is a practice change journey is what we like to call it. So that's a bit of jargon that I guess we use in the reef space. So that's taking agricultural enterprises from, maybe a poorer condition with financial losses to a system that's functioning healthy and, is actually making financial gains through increasing natural capital and or natural assets type of thing. So we do a lot of that on ground type of work. And one thing I did want to just mention here, so there's a couple of photos of engagement tools and sites and stuff, but so pretty much without our landholder and contractor buy-in, so pretty much nothing moves on the ground for us. So I guess that's why we need proper engagement. And so if we just head to the next slide. So feeding that into that, so what is our approach, I guess, for engaging landholders? So as I've kind of alluded to, for us, it's about having that highest level of presence in our local community. We want to be out there in front of people, having conversations, building trust and rapport and relationships with individuals, which is, I guess, a bit of a different take on some of the stuff we've heard today, which is at that higher level sort of communication in and around science. For us, it's more that practical on ground, what does this actually mean for a landholder, and how can you take them on a journey to either improve practice or maybe just shift the mindsets or something along those lines. And I guess that's what I do on the day-to-day. So I thought that this little diagrammatic was quite interesting for you all just to kind of have a look at. So what you're looking at here is, so the Great Barrier Reef Report Card is one of the tools I'll talk on in my next slide, but that we help visualize water quality outcomes and stuff like that from. And so as part of that, they do the social indicator sort of research. So for a landholder to be involved in CAIM, which was quite interesting, they talk about fulfilling regulatory obligations and financial incentives. So for us, it's about recognizing that perspective and bringing that into our engagement story. You're not going to improve anything or make a change if you come at it with the wrong perspective. So I think one thing I'd like to get across, I guess, to the group is taking on board those, perspectives of the person you're working for, particularly in our case, a landholder. How do you tailor your story for the co-benefits? I guess is the key outcome from my role and what I've learned in my time here. So we'll just head to the next slide. And so this is a bit of a messy slide, I've realized, but anyway, there's a lot of data in there. So feel free to jump in and ask me a heap of questions when we get into the little breakout room, because I'm very keen to talk on this stuff. So pretty much, as I kind of mentioned earlier, so some technical tools and visualizations that help us sort of in this region is sort of these report cards, they call them. So I guess it's a kind of a visual representation of this health of a catchment and or the water quality flowing out of that catchment. So if you have a look at the figure here, so that's talking about the waterway grades for the Mackay, Sunday, Isaac region that I work in. And you can visually see there that it's quite self-explanatory. It really goes through and scores the health of the waterway or catchment through like a B, C scoring. And then there's several parameters that feed into that. So those report cards are generated to give people a visual representation, I suppose, of water quality in different catchments and, how that then relates to them as an individual. There's also a range of tools up the side there. I won't go into them because I think I'm running out of time, but yeah, so, and that's all from me. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Emma. Look, and no, you've touched on, I think that issue of trust that you touched on, like I've been up in your part of the world once, and it really took me, it wasn't until about a good year or a year and a half that people sort of realized that maybe there was things that we could do together. And so that issue of trust about people who do engagement is not to be overlooked. So thanks for raising that. So I think from a design point of view, that's got huge ramifications. Folks, so we've got a chance to follow back through. Let's do a quick reminder. You're going to be offered, person's just giving you the marketplace opportunities. We originally had 15, but now we're down to 10 to keep our schedule on track. But essentially, you've got 6 different rooms, which are, so Kirsten, they're the names, not numbers.
Names.
They're names. So you've got Sarah's their room, so you'll hear about the sort of the great tool, the visualization tool that she's used. You've got Alan's room, which is about the Small Creek project and the co-design work there. You've got Gregor, who talked about the Raincraft tool. You've got Michael, who's got also co-design work around climate change. We've got Emma, who just talked about values. And then you've got Hilda, also doing a serious game one. So look, we're going to open up all the rooms, and Kirsten, just remind me what we have. You can choose.
What I can do is quickly explain really briefly. This is an opportunity for every one of you to choose your own room. But when you're actually in the room, you can join another room as well. If you leave a room, you actually go back to the main room, but you can also choose to click on breakout rooms and join another room directly. So you don't have to go from the breakout room back to the main room to go to another one. So you can actually click on breakout rooms and then see the selection again to go to another room if you want to in between. So I wish you all fun, enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes.
Okay, so we're all coming back in. Folks, that was good. G'day, Cameron. Good to see. Now, what people around the world are here. Please. Hey, look, that was an opportunity to just drill down a bit further. We won't do any reflections on that session because Kirsten's just setting ourselves up for our next opportunity. And I think we're seeing today, like I'm just realizing, you know, between serious games, the concept of co-design, you know, the Raincraft game, you know, like there's lots of different things that are available to us. And I suppose what we'd like to pose to you as you're about to go into your next breakout rooms, which are going to be we're just going to do this random, aren't we? Just going to, so good luck on who you end up, and you know, if you get Brian, look, my apologies in advance for his amazing, insightful Scottish humour, but you know, like that'll be a bonus. But look, as you go into your rooms, we want to ask you 2 questions, and we're going to have some discussion when we come back. So first question is, what are your reflections on the use of these tools so far? And, you know, we've heard of the pros and the cons, but honestly, what do you think? But more importantly, how might these tools be used to enhance engagement practice? So some of you are less or more involved in engagement practice, but, you know, you've got an opportunity to maybe set some direction. How do you think it might help your engagement practice? So we're back on schedule now. We're going to give you a good 15 minutes to go into your breakout rooms. So Kirsten, should we bring those 2 questions back on?
Yeah.
So there you go. They're the questions we'd like to offer you as a way of discussion. So let's send you off to your room. Success and enjoy. Till then, bye. Welcome back, everyone. We're slowly coming back in. So good to see all these different faces and different parts. Thanks to everyone for having your photo on. Okay, Dan, look, I love it. You know, I know back in Queensland, what is it now? It must be 5:30. 5:30,
Yep.
Going into the shortest day of the year in Australia. How's that? Whereas we've just had the longest day of the year here in Europe. It's bizarre.
Still 24 hours in the day.
No, we haven't. No, it doesn't change that.
You're messing with physics, man.
But no, look, hey, look, we had designed this so well to go 15 minutes, but Zoom decided it would only give us 10 minutes. So our apologies, but
More time for group discussion.
yeah, no, well, look, there's plenty to discuss. And look, I'm just going to be totally random and ask group 6 who
There was no 6.
oh, well, there you go. So group 6, we didn't have a group 6. I'll go more random. Can we get someone from group 4? Let's get a couple of highlights from each of the group as we go around and use that as a bit of a basis for discussion. So group 4, is there someone from there who's brave enough to join us to give us a few comments about what were some highlights of their discussion?
I think Noala might be. Noala, it's your chance.
Yes, Noella. Yeah, the giant. Thank you, Noella.
It's Nula, but I don't know. We were still very much in discussion about how to engage, and the perspective we were talking about is how to maybe how to get everyone engaged in board gaming, because some people might be interested because they like board games, but there are also people who maybe don't like board games or games in general, and how do you get them to engage as well. And we were just talking about the perspective, maybe not frame it as we're going to game, but maybe frame it as what is it that's going to bring, what's going to bring it to the table. So more the goal eventually than just we're going to play a nice game. And I think we were still in discussion about how, what, and who. So that, in short.
That's excellent, because it's when you what's the feature that draws people into the gathering, I suppose, is what you're saying. And I think that is true. And I think the games, they're all tools. They're tools for a greater purpose. And so I think it's an interesting part of the marketing, part of the design. And like you said too, everyone has a different feeling. Like some people, some generations just love to get in there and competitive, whereas some other people just want to have like Mark Pascoe, our colleague, used to work with. We used to do all these great processes, and he'd sit in the side of the room and have a chat with other people. And you feel like going, hang on, we've just designed this great process, and you just go talk with people on the side. But that's how he felt comfortable. He would then still be working on the issue, but he'd just be having a side conversation. So, and I think in a lot of groups, that's what you often do. You have to, how do you cater on the day for that diversity? Okay, thanks, Noella. And look, I appreciate you being here. I see you've got an interesting role where you are for your serious games and other facilitation work. Much appreciated. So I'm going to go to room 1 because I saw Cameron was there. Cameron, you're in room 1. You've always got something to say about the sort of interesting parts of what's happening. What jumped out in your group, Cameron?
I don't even know what room I was in.
Yeah, I saw you in 1. We had to put you somewhere.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had a good discussion around, I suppose, the spectrum of engagement tools that we'd seen today. From in the field to in the classroom with a board game to in the far end of the field with Sarah putting virtual reality headsets on people. And probably spoke about a horses for courses. Like how do you pick what technology you might want to adopt for the catchment? And it was probably, even with sort of Emma's report cards that she had as well. So how do you pick what might be appropriate for the catchment? And in sort of like Southeast Queensland, where we are, so many different catchments and so many different values in freshwater, terrestrial to marine and coastal. You might need to adopt a whole suite of different tools, targeting different catchments and different ages within there. So, I think I think it's great to see people around the world thinking about the stakeholder engagement. As a scientist, sort of do the science work and then, expect everyone just to jump on board, but, it's not that easy in the real world.
Well, we're just having Milena here in the room, we're just having this talk about how do we factor engagement into projects? Like we're very good at doing the design, building the strategy and our operational stuff, but it's a bit like, do we do engagement as a tack-on? Like you have to do a bit of communication, so do a bit of communication of your project, but how many projects really invest in engagement as part of a mainstream? We have big projects these days, but do we factor 10% of the resources to engagement? Look, it's a little hobby horse of mine, so I throw that in there because I think it influences the investment of what we're seeing in terms of great ideas and tools is not trivial, but it needs to be supported by an interest in projects or communities. Like I know from my experience in local government, there's whole teams who work on engagement. So they have it as a real focus. Whereas what you touched on, Cameron's quite true. The technologists are working with a range of other people. Where's the sociologists who come along or the people who work in this space? I think it's an emerging field and it's something that we all can maybe influence and make sure these tools have a good place. Anyway, that's my hobby horse.
Can I add
Please.
perhaps just to that there, Pete? Because I think that this is a space that's changing really rapidly. Being right there in among it at the moment, I'm really starting to see the shift in projects incorporating engagement as part of the planning from the very beginning. In fact, it's an expectation these days on bigger projects that is part of the process. And so the time frame is probably the thing that everyone is, considering. How long does it actually take? Because engagement is not something that ever really ends once you start the ball rolling. And so it's about gathering that information and making sure that we can, collect it in a way that's reportable, usable, and factors into the rest of the design. So I just wanted to
Can I
add
add to that, Pete?
Yeah, please.
I was going to say, second what Sarah's saying, we're seeing on a number of projects now, the consultation is so critical that it's the key thing that's being a bit of a logjam on a number of concurrent projects. What particularly local governments are seeing is they have certain windows and that the community has a certain bandwidth for engagement. Their key stakeholder groups, plus the smaller community, they can only run so many concurrent bits of community consultation, and they might be running projects on waterfront redevelopment, new planning scheme, how they might design some new parks, as well as a flooding project. And they don't want to do any of those projects without community engagement. So it's creating a bit of a choke. And so there's actually a big driver to get quite efficient ways of engaging with the community now.
No, thanks for that. Look, yeah, I think it's a nice problem to have. But yeah, that technique and how we do it is good. Hey, look, there were two other groups. Are there any sort of highlights from one of the other groups? Brian, were you in one of the other groups? I know you were with Nuala. Who else was there? Yeah, Abel.
Yeah, I put my hand up to just tell you something funny as well. One of the games that we did develop was for 4 players. So I was trying to explain it to a couple of the director generals of different departments, and I said it's a 4-play game. So but it got us thinking. At the end of the day, is engagement is overused. People want to walk together, not be engaged with. But at the same time, the word engagement actually means it's a commitment to something further, and that's a long-term relationship. So I think one of the things we got to think about in gamification is not just engagement for its own sake, if it doesn't lead to investment. So just like 4play's got to lead to something, right? Some action, and hopefully there'll be happiness at the end of the day. But think about gamification, playing, they're all part of life, right? So I think just talking about engagement in itself is okay. It's a starting point, but there's got to be an outcome from it. There's got to be something beyond that, which means investment. People must make investment decisions, whether it's time, their resources, or their capital, whatever it is. And that's when you start seeing the landscape changes that we saw in, Emma's presentation or Alan's presentation. Otherwise, it's great fun, and we all agreed on that. Where do we take it next?
No, it's a great point, Abel. Abel, in terms of the project that we're dealing about, impact for engagement, it's a little side thing that Abel and I are sort of trying to work on. It's, it is about our different roles. We have huge wicked problems in the water and related space we're dealing with. How do we sort of, it is a journey. So, and that journey involves different levels of commitment. You're right, Abel. So if we can use these tools to, catalyze and, and even I love how the Dutch really embrace scenario planning, and some of you have done the adaptation work, which has scenarios as well, but they really look at that in a serious way. It's not trivial. So they need as many different ways to visualize and experience what those scenarios are, because they're making huge sort of national commitments to where they go. So interesting. There's any other comments from the other rooms? But we're having a nice open discussion here.
I should share at least one, I think, highlight from room 2. which I think was a recommendation by Alan, which I really liked, because we built a lot with water in our Minecraft game, and I think it was a very good point of him to make that we should really stop coloring water blue in these visualizations, because it makes your roof in a flooding look like a tropical island. You want to dive right in, which is not what you want people to do. So let's recolor the water to be looking muddy and murky as it is, not attractive blue. I really like that one. But look, in general, we see the challenge of how to develop engagement tools that really connect with people's lives, as in, like, people really connect them, relate them to their own lives. So even if they live far away from the riverside or the coast, but we know as professionals, but flooding could impact you as well in a particular event. But how do you make people feel that urgency? And visualization can help, but we've still got some way to go in doing that.
Gregor, the work that you did in Yangon, like that all happened during the start of the lockdown. Like, I'm familiar with Gregor's efforts there. Like, you've got a country that's literally going into isolation and got all sorts of, lots of dramatic change around. But during that period, like, did that process give a sense of a bit of focus or a way for those communities to connect? Like, was there some observations what was happening then?
Frankly, people were joining with fear in their eyes. I mean, I put it bluntly. It was COVID, but of course the military coup that came right after. Like, bullets were flying through the streets. In the neighborhood that we did our project, people got arrested, and some people have never been seen back. And interestingly, people found a bit of a safe haven in joining this little group that we had playing the game. Some people commented like it allowed them to dream a little bit about a better future coming, and living in this virtual world. Look, that is not what you hope to do.
Look,
but it happened.
It's an extreme scenario, which I sort of part of that isolation concept. Emma, you've got something there you like to share with us.
Yeah, I was just going to summarize for our group just real quick. I think we're group 3, maybe. And we were just really talked about how fun, I guess, the variety of tools were that we kind of saw today. We sort of chatted a bit about, how bringing that lighthearted nature, I guess, to some of these complex and wicked problems, maybe is one of the first steps, I guess, to get people thinking about that. We also talked a little bit about intergenerational change and, who's going to be, I guess, the focus for some of these engagement tools. We spoke about the younger population, being more tech savvy and things like that. Like, will they be the people that utilize these tools going forward and be a catalyst for change further up the field? So I guess some of the conversations that we had in our group.
Look, I think talking about our different audiences is so important, because I think my experience is that every time, whether it's a different catchment or a different suburb, it's sort of there's really subtle nuances and how you take importance of that, and the fact that you most likely you need to create some space for some non-technological interactions. So where you physically do tell stories are really important. So to me, engagement is all about investing in time, because then you get trust, and then from trust, understanding. I think I'm not a sociologist, but I'd love to have some more sociologists in the room who would help us with understanding what we're doing now and again, because there's a whole lot of relationship issues we're doing. Sarah.
Yeah, I did just on that. I just to extend what you're saying there. We did in our room discuss a little bit around the behavioural change and what's required for the mind, the being that we are getting around in. No one makes a change in their life unless it's felt. There's a reason to change, and so if we're not going to connect with the behaviour to get the behavioural shifts that we're after. We really need to connect with the person, with the being, and that's the touchy-feely thing that we, I guess, maybe just starting to connect with through these types of games and visualizations. You can feel it, you can see it. There's a sensory experience actually going on. So it's, I think, the behavioral shift that we're.
And when do you change behavior? I think when you hit people's money, because if you're aware that you're living in a flood-prone area, or there are lots of hailstones on your car, and if you are warned, you have to move your car. And if you're not moving your car, you have to pay for the damage yourself. Yeah. I think that's already happening in the United States, where insurance companies warn the people, but if they don't follow up, then they have to pay their own damage. And that's a bit tricky. Do you want to do that's a bit maybe too much, but change with the energy crisis. We're doing other stuff with our energy because it's getting more expensive. So that's also changing behavior of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's tricky, but maybe necessary.
Well, look, and I think in Australia, and part of one of the things we're doing in our group, and it's got me thinking, like, we're really trying to better appreciate the values of Indigenous people and the way that they've gone about caring for their country for years. We've got so much to learn from them. So that process of appreciation, and like that Abel said, they're basically asking us to walk alongside them, because, you know, we don't, you know, engaging is maybe a word, but they want to co-collaborate, if I can use that as a word. Like, it's our friend Phil Duncan, who we work with, he basically said, can you just show up and walk with us in some of this work? So what does that sort of engagement look like? And so we're still exploring that as well, which is nice. Folks, I'm just conscious we're just about to hit a minute to go. So I'm going to try and be a good timekeeper, not always one of my fortes, but let's bring it to a hold here. And look, we always have this where to next as part of our discussion. And like, it's been great having Milena here today as a government official to watch what we're doing, because she's actually been taking lots of notes. So I'm really curious about what she's picking up. But even Nathan in the Sydney office from the Dutch Embassy, like, Nathan's often been trying to look at collaboration opportunities, and he's doing some work with different parts of the water sector. So this whole opportunity for us to collaborate, I think, is there. It's just a bit of a door opener. So I think through the Queensland Water Modelling Network and the Flood Community of Practice, we're definitely very open to continue finding topics that we can come together with. So maybe post the event, if you've got our emails somewhere in amongst everything. If you've got some thoughts on topics that you'd talk to us again, like, you know, Dan, it's been great to have you and Michelle on board from our state agency at Queensland, because I think in Queensland, you know, at a government level, you guys are trying to do things differently. And I know there's a lot we can learn from our Dutch colleagues, and vice versa. Our Dutch colleagues are really keen to learn from Queensland colleagues. So there's a nice reciprocal opportunity there. So like your colleague.
Just a little comment. There was a couple of comments in the rooms I was in about other people may have things to share as well, like specific tools that you might be working on. If there are anything like that, feel free to send them through via email, and we can I'll be collecting and collating the comments and everything from this event to put up on our website in a post-event article. So if there's anything there, we can make sure it's listed on that.
So Dan, Steph was just here in the Netherlands. So she had a whirlwind trip with one of our friends, Frode van Essen, went to Rotterdam to see some water value stuff with one of the big yacht races that are happening. So water is such a mainstream issue. So it'll be interesting to see what she comes back with, some experiences.
That's all right. I'll be putting in my next field trip request then.
Look, that's, and I think the nice thing, like, honestly, Robert, if you're coming to Australia and you want to connect with any of us, please do. Like, you know, like, it's a big investment to go from one hemisphere to another, but if you're going to be here, let's connect, and you know, I'm sure we can find ways to have time with you.
Thank you very much for your invitation, and I would love to. So I'll think about it. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you.
So no.
Sure.
Well, folks, let's like officially we'll bring this to a close now. Like we'll leave the chat on from back. So if anyone wants to just chat informally, feel free. And now, like, it's nice to see. Thanks to all the speakers, to Emma, to Hilda, to Michelle, and then Al. Great to have you on board. Sarah, you're going to be here anyway. Gregor, I'm going to see you again soon. So it's this lovely sort of connection of people that we keep rich. Good to see my friend Ray there from New South Wales. Like, it's good to have a few of our cockroach friends on board for a day. But anyway, it's we're always learning from each other. So that's lovely. But look, thanks again, everyone. Thanks to Kirsten. Thanks to Sarah and Brian. And enjoy your evening, Australia. And in the Netherlands, it's a beautiful day to just enjoy. So I'm going to hop on my bike in a moment and just ride somewhere because that's what you do in the Netherlands. But, okay.
See you.
We'll catch you all later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
If anyone wants to chat,
Thank you.
free.
Hey.